folks represented here on this page by the power and potential of what we can do together.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to Eden Housing, the Pacific Companies, and the primary school for your presentations and for being here tonight to answer our questions. And before I move on to commissioner questions, I forgot to announce, and I apologize if any of the committees listening wanted to make comments. Item 2 has been continued to a date uncertain, so we will not be discussing item 2 this evening. We only have the one agenda discussing the La Vista complex this evening. So I apologize if anyone was waiting for that. We're not doing that this evening. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to commissioner questions on, yes, okay, commissioner questions on this item. And I see Commissioner Goldstein's hand is up.
Yes, hi. Great presentation. Staff, you did a very nice job of answering almost all of the questions that someone could think of. I just have a couple of simple questions. Is the school going to be part of Hayward Unified, or is it a private school?
Good question. I'll let Kate or Courtney and the school team address that. Part of it is it's still being figured out, which is what was explained in that letter that was shared with the commissioners early. So Kate, James, Courtney, I don't know if anyone wants to address that in more detail.
Courtney, can you take that one?
Of course, yes. Thank you, Commissioner Goldstein, for the question. So I shared, and I could do a little more detail here, and let me know if there's more detail that would be helpful, that 2 years ago, we initiated outreach to and began discussions with stakeholders within Hayward Unified, and really wanted to ask first, is there a possibility here of initiating kind of an innovative structure of a district partnership school, for lack of a better term, where we can really see this model come to life in the context of and under the governance of Hayward Unified. And so we wrote an LOI together at that time and began a process of exploring that opportunity with a planning committee coming together that represented a number of folks from across different spaces within Hayward Unified and from the primary school end as well. And then we ultimately received a request to extend the timeline of that planning process earlier this spring. And so we've recently had the school board take action to sign a second LOI that is governing a few more months of planning over the course of this summer and fall. And as I mentioned, I think there's a lot of questions to address in that, as you can imagine, about how this kind of a model can be adapted to and can fit with a lot of the structures and systems within Hayward Unified. There are some things that are very clear to us that we've been clear about from the beginning, including some of the pieces around, of course, addressing issues of compensation and benefits in ways that are on par with Hayward schools, having school staff be unionized. But there's just a host of other questions about how this kind of a model can really fit with the structures within Hayward Unified. So we are excited about and see the unique value of that potential pathway, and are working really closely with stakeholders within Hayward Unified to see through that process. And as Elizabeth said, it's not yet answered. We're in the process of determining if we reach an agreement for that kind of a structure.
All right, very good. It's a very interesting model that you're proposing. What is the impact on your financing to build and run the school with all the services if you don't have a partnership with Hayward Unified?
So I should have answered this other part of your question earlier, Commissioner Goldstein, thank you, which is that we first, like I said, over the last 2 years have explored the district partnership school option. And if we don't arrive at a structure that makes sense in both directions for that kind of a structure, then the other option that we would pursue would be a charter school. We do not intend to pursue and wouldn't be pursuing a private school.
I see. Okay, very good. Thank you. That's all the questions I have. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Ali Sullivan.
Thank you very much to all the presenters and to city staff for all the details. Hopefully a couple of quick ones here. And I'll start with Ms. Blanton if I can. Let's see, the parking for the site. Can you talk me through a little bit about the parking requirements here? And I guess the concerns that I have are sort of twofold. One, from the plan, more of a visual concern, but it looks like there are about half a mile of parking along the single street where everything's gonna be locked, just car, which doesn't look great, although that's just aesthetics. But there's a mass amount of parking there. However, you have a lot of 3-bedroom apartments in the site, which likely will have multiple people living in them. That likely will include multiple drivers. And so to have 150 or so parking spots doesn't seem to me to be enough. Can you talk me through the parking numbers a little bit?
Yeah. So the overall count of dedicated spaces for the residential is 183 spaces. To your point, there's 176 units. Some of those are studios, but some of those are 3-bedroom units, 1-bedroom units, 2-bedroom units. So quite a mix. In this particular case, since this is a density bonus application, so 100% affordable project, they qualify for a density bonus as permitted by state law. State law was updated recently, as with all the other housing laws. And the most recent updates to state density bonus law say that if a density bonus project is located within a half mile of transit, high quality transit, such as the BART station, then we as a city only have the ability to require 0.5 spaces per unit, regardless of the unit size. So whatever our position is as a city, obviously normally this would require significantly more parking than is being provided here. Yeah. We don't have the ability to require more than they're providing, and in fact, they're requiring over double what they have to for the residential. Something else that I will mention is, since the school is the other the other use on site, there is potential for shared parking here, as usually residential is going to see its most heavy parking demand in the evenings and on the weekends. Schools obviously would need the parking during the day. So there is a little bit of flexibility in that sense.
So if this was not all low-income housing, if it didn't meet that density bonus law for low-income housing, there's absolutely no way that this parking would be appropriate for the number of units.
Yeah, it would depend on, the specific kind of density bonus application. If it was not a density bonus application at all, no. The parking that would be required for this zoning district, since it's not in the Mission Boulevard form-based code area, it's just a straight RMB4 district, would be it's 1.5 parking spaces per studio, up to 2.1 parking spaces for 2 and 3 bedrooms.
And the residents are expected to walk up the hill back to their apartments from the BART station, because it is technically within the mileage of high quality transit.
Yeah, there are two. I hear that. There are two different access points to BART. One is via this stairway down to Tennyson. The other, though, from the northern edge of the parking lot, especially for people biking, is a much more flat route, or for strollers or things like that. So there are a couple of options. But yes, state density bonus law does not take into account elevation. It just tells us within a half-mile circle.
I question the actual usage of the BART up and down a hill, but that's opinion, and so we won't raise it right now. Density. The density question, it's based on the area of land, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the density is based on the 28.5 acres. That gives you the number of units that you're allowed to have from a density perspective. Is that correct?
Yeah, in this case, we're basing it on the developable area.
Okay.
So the part of the project, that would be eligible, because not all of the 28 acres is zoned for residential. So it's just based on the part of the project that could potentially have residential.
Okay. And if the developer wanted, I guess the question is in relation to how the project is spread out, because a lot of the presentation dealt with that. Again, the project is concentrated in a particular piece of this land. Theoretically, correct me if I'm wrong, but theoretically, the applicant could build a 15-story building that had a floor plan of just 2 or 3 units per floor, and it would still be appropriate for this land based on just density of the developable land?
Based on density, yes, but not based on height. The density bonus provisions in state law allow for a 3-story height increase. So they could go a little higher than they are. They're at 63 feet right now. They could go up to 73 feet, but yes, that would be true based on density. No, that would not be true based on other development
Okay. I'm being a little facetious there, but okay, that's helpful. Then as far as the fault and slips, if you can explain to me how, I guess, moving the land, the property, and I'm not a geotechnical expert, but it seems to me that moving a building 50, 100 feet away from the fault is not going to make much of a difference if there's an earthquake. And so I'm curious why, I guess, adjusting the property, the developable piece or where the buildings are actually going theoretically makes a significant difference in the safety as it relates to the fault.
Yeah, I'll here largely defer to Scott Wickstrom, who's our senior engineer, who is has a geotechnical background. But yes, there's certain parts of land that are more likely to be impacted in a seismic event. And in addition, they wouldn't be allowed to build, the proposed development without additional kind of seismic infrastructure, this key way that they're currently in the process of developing with the La Vista Park team. So just to make the site stable at all for development, there needs to be some infrastructure in place. But Scott, you're the experts. I'll let you take over.
Thank you, and good evening, Commissioner Ali Sullivan. Your question was really about the fault and the proximity to the fault. And really, when you think about seismic hazards, there's a number of seismic hazards, but the two that are really at the forefront to your question are ground rupture, i.e. you're actually standing on the fault and the fault slips past you, and there might be some vertical, there might be some horizontal offset that occurs. And that's a very narrow, focused hazard. And that's where the California Geological Society plus the engineering geologists that review the site and did trenching across the site have identified the fault location and provided a recommended 50-foot setback such that that ground fault rupture would be separate from the building. Now, there's a second component, obviously, to the seismicity, and that's just the ground shaking. And the ground shaking will be severe. There's no question about that. But it's also going to be severe at 50 feet as it is at a quarter mile, as it is at a half mile. And it's not going to be substantially, massively different from 50 feet to 100 feet to 500 feet away. It's going to be significant. And all of that is addressed in the building code. Obviously, there's a lot of building going on in California with high seismicity. So two separate issues. Fault rupture is handled through the setback, and the strong shaking through building code, structural foundation design, et cetera.
Excellent, very helpful. Is there any, I guess, consideration taken into the use of buildings being built adjacent to faults? I guess the question being, is it appropriate to be building a school literally on top or as adjacent as possible to a fault? Well, there are different considerations for occupancy, and that factors into the structural analysis and the building code review. If this does ultimately get to be, a partnership with Hayward Unified, there may be some also additional review that may be required by the Division of State Architect. That would be a better left for our chief building official. But yeah, there are, higher thresholds that are applied for those type of structures. Okay. That certainly raises some eyebrows for me. And then, Ms. Blanton, I guess the last question I have for you, obviously I've seen the presentation that you gave. Can you, again, just humor me here? Can you walk me through, I believe it was slide 18 of your presentation. You have to potentially pull it up, but SB 330, the Housing Crisis Act of 2019, the requirement, it says, housing development project that complies with the objective standards of the general plan and zoning ordinance must be approved by the city. So that in effect means that there's not much of a decision tonight. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, that would mean there are, and I can pull up slide 18 if we want, even though I apologize, it was a little small. There are exceptions to that, but they're very limited in scope. Generally speaking, for the site plan review of this application, that is accurate unless there's some sort of major concern that would justify not approving it as allowed per SB 330. This would not apply to the administrative use permit for the school. So while the entire mixed use project is looked at together, the use permit is kind of a separate issue.
And so if you can clarify that for me, what you mean by that. Obviously, there's a separate site use permit for the school. However, the project that we're being presented with tonight is a single entity.
Mixed use development. Yeah.
Right.
So correct. So that applies to the site plan review application, the density bonus application, basically all the components that include the residential component of the project.
So what you mean by that is this project could theoretically be approved, but the school not open?
But the administrative use permit not allowed. And Joe, please jump in if I'm mischaracterizing here. But yes, I believe the residential project, which includes a mixed use project, so that covers the site plan review. That's really what SB 330 is looking at. It's looking at protecting residential development, not necessarily a school development.
That's accurate.
Okay. All right, and then let's see. Last question for the applicant: how are residents selected for the property? I guess the question being, is there any preference given to Hayward residents? Is there any preference given to the Hayward Police Academy applicant, as you noted on your slide, or the Hayward Unified School District teacher that you noted on your slide? Because it looks great to see that this might go to Hayward residents, but is there actually any process or policy that would allow some type of preferential treatment for Hayward municipal employees or Hayward residents?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner. I believe this is something that we would work out in the final DDA. And Jen or Linda, if you also want to hop in on this, there's currently no plan to have a preference for teachers or for police officers. Linda, I see you have brought your video on.
I just went online just to talk about what we did at Altamira up the street. Is we had a point system. So you have to comply with fair housing and how you do this. And we had a preference system for people who had been dislocated from the 238 right of way. And then we had points for live and work in Hayward. And we didn't get past any of those preferences. So pretty much everybody was 238 or live or work in Hayward for that project. So we could talk with the staff about a similar kind of preference system here. It has to comply with fair housing. So, but we're happy to do that.
Okay. Chair, I think that's it for the moment. Thank you for the time.
Great. Thank you. Commissioner Stevens.
Thank you, Chair. I have one question to start regarding bike access. Could we look at how a cyclist might navigate from the site to the BART facility? And I'm specifically asking the question while I'm reviewing the conditions of approval in the transportation section. And one of them talks a little bit about modifying the westbound turn lane, reducing the westbound right turn lane from Tennyson to Mission. I'm just curious about how do bikes get in and out of this site?
Stephen, do you want to address that condition specifically? And this is Stephen Chang from our Transportation Division.
Good evening, Commissioner Stevens. Yeah, you know, the bicycles will be accessing through, obviously, you can access it through the two entrances on East 16th and along Tennyson. There is a bike lane along Tennyson. The condition specifically was written to provide some flexibility to try to improve the comfort for bicyclists, because it is downhill and you know, there is a little bit of a constraint there with the turn lane. So the condition is to provide some flexibility for during the improvement plan phase when the applicant can work with the city to determine what we can do to make that a little bit more comfortable for bicyclists for that downhill section.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. One question. So cyclists traveling up the hill, up Tennyson, I did not see in the site plan any improvements of how they are to go from the eastbound bike lane into the driveway. And I see no striping or signage enhancements in the driveway.
Yeah, so one of the conditions is actually to add a left turn lane to a 100-foot left turn lane into the site of Tennyson. So there will be some modifications there to provide that access.
So the cyclist shares the road there in the left turn lane with vehicles?
We believe that there will be room to continue that bike lane through the intersection. But if it does get a little bit too constrained, then we could turn it into a share. But right now, we believe that we do have enough right of way to accommodate the bicycle lane.
And then on the other road, 16th, is that the one?
Yes, that is correct.
are there any proposed improvements? Is that a class 3 route, or is there any conditions that require improvements there?
There are no conditions specifically regarding bicyclists. However, the applicant has been conditioned to provide a center line striping and speed radar feedback signs, as well as pavement markings to indicate the 25-mile-per-hour residential speed limit.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. So when I look at the intersection at Mission and Tennyson, it looks like it's at about elevation 30 or so. And the future residents in the school somewhere up at 126, elevation 126. So it looks like there's about 97 feet of elevation difference between those sites. Does that seem about right?
Approximately, yes.
And then the staircase looks like it's about a 28-foot elevation change. So there's about 48 steps there.
Yes.
Okay, and then I have a question about, in the plans, section GG, which is taken at the westerly elevation of the school. It shows a tiered retaining wall there. And it shows there's 4 6-foot wall tiers there. I'm just curious, the rendering that's shown depicting that condition as taken from Mission and Tennyson, it doesn't appear to show the walls there. So I was just curious about what's the treatment of the walls? Is there a landscaping proposed in that location, or what does that look like? Because I don't think the rendering that Ms. Blanton you had identifies that condition, or maybe I'm misreading the plan.
Yeah, part of that is because the city and the applicant are in active kind of communication and negotiations about what the access road will look like. And as a result, what the retaining walls behind the project on the east side will look like. There's actually just earlier this week, we had some conversations with the La Vista Park team where they're adjusting some of their grading, and this project is adjusting some of its grading to eliminate the need for some retaining walls. So part of that is just because this is still in motion, and this is something that the city is still considering. Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe what is shown on the sections in the plans is kind of the quote worst case scenario. That would be like the most retaining walls that we would see as a result of this project. But due to some of the kind of nuanced grading and adjustments to both the La Vista Park site and this site that are currently underway, we might actually be able to eliminate some of that.
I can add a little bit of context to that as well. So Elizabeth is absolutely correct. There's 2 real sets of retaining walls. There's retaining walls behind the project on the east side, which abut La Vista Park. And that is currently an area that we're actively coordinating with the La Vista Park development and seeking to optimize and frankly, try to reduce some of those retaining walls. I believe, Commissioner Stevens, your question was really about the retaining walls, I believe you called out section GG, which are below the school. Which would be a vantage point up from Tennyson Road up to those. And I think you're pointing out that the section doesn't really call those out. One of the reasons why there are four walls there, and unfortunately, if you look at that section carefully, it's not to scale, and it really isn't drawn to scale, is our current hillside grading guidelines call for the maximum 6-foot face height of those walls, with a 6-foot lateral setback between them. And then you have a 15-foot setback to the second set of walls, with the intention of breaking that up so it's not one solid mass of a wall, but really appears to be a smaller individual walls. And again, I think the context you have to keep it in is that viewpoint from Tennyson up to those walls is probably going to be about 30 feet up in the air. So they are going to appear. You won't be immediately on top of those 6-foot walls. They'll be some distance. But I believe your comment about this section, whether it adequately reflects those, is probably a valid question.
Thank you, Mr. Wickstrom. And then my final question is, when I look at the correlation between the building B and Mission Heights, which is the units to the west of this, I think, as I understand the plans, the new buildings will be approximately 63 feet in height. So the top of the building building B will reach about an absolute elevation of 184 feet. And the buildings below are like the second unit looks like it's at about elevation 113. And while I recognize the second floor elevations of those existing units are looking at a wall and maybe looking at trees, they seem to be now going to be really almost in a tunnel. Am I seeing this correctly? And they're going to be substantially below. This building's going to cast a giant shadow in the morning on it. Am I understanding that correctly?
There is a substantial elevation increase between that adjacent western development and the project site. So yes, that elevation difference plus the building height will increase the stature of the building to that existing multifamily development.
Thank you, Ms. Blanton.
Thank you. Commissioner Okenda.
I just wanted to ask a quick question about transit on the topic of transportation and access to BART. I don't know, on the question of like cycling, I'm someone, I don't own a car, so I bike everywhere, and I feel like, you know, I know I'm also physically healthy and able-bodied, and it's a different you know, concern for me. I see that as a very great location to BART, bikeable up and downhill. Even for someone, I'm not a long distance biker. So just as a question, what are I was trying to find these, and what are the closest bus stops, and are there going to be, and guys, I guess how would you define or describe the connections to the bus stops on Mission there? I know there are a few, I just couldn't identify them quickly right now. But I wanted to know how you see those factoring in being used potentially, or if there's options to work with AC Transit or others for kind of shuttle services. Because affordable housing, there's going to be a not insignificant amount of people who have disabilities, who may have mobility problems, or maybe older. So I think those considerations are really important, and I just wanted to know if. Like what can be done, if anything is being done right now to do more on that front?
Yeah, great question. All of the improvements that will be connecting accessibility to Mission Boulevard in general, that's where most of the bus stops in the area are going to be. Stephen, you can let me know if there are others nearby that I'm not thinking of, but that's where most of the mobility connections are going to be, whether the BART station that's just beyond Mission Boulevard or on Mission Boulevard. So, you know, the site is on a hill. That is true. That's unavoidable. So the applicant has worked with our transportation division and our consultants, our transportation consultants, to, you know, try to figure out ways to make the best connections possible from this site, to make it as easy as possible, given that elevation difference, to walk or bike down to Mission Boulevard and connect with some of those bus stops. I imagine because BART is so close nearby, and, you know, it's going to offer so much more commuting potential, just because it reaches so many more places, that most people are going to be trying to make it to the BART station. So that's where we focused our conversation. But again, you know, any of these, the bike lanes, the infrastructure, kind of some of these connections, you know, the stairway for those that can walk and take a little bit more of a robust walk, that is going to promote connectivity to Mission. Stephen, I don't know if you have anything that you would like to add.
Yeah, you know, the other thing I could add is that, you know, while we can't obviously do anything about the hill, as Elizabeth has mentioned, we did ask the project is actually conditioned to improve some of the crosswalks in the area to high visibility ones. So there is a safety aspect that we can improve upon, and which this project will be improving upon.
My follow-up question is, like, isn't there work that the applicant can do to be kind of working with AC Transit to, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be a fully sort of circular, constant shuttle service that goes back and forth between, you know, the BART station and the place. But, you know, I already know that the county offers a lot of different services that are, you know, for call, for example, for seniors or people with disabilities that can get a shuttle, you know, for free. And so, like, how is the applicant kind of working within the parameters of what services already exist to make sure that they're as accessible and, you know, for the people who will be moving in as possible?
Yeah.
I just wanted to kind of know that.
Great question. Kate, I'll let you respond to this one.
I think we're definitely open to discussing those opportunities to partner. I will say that committing to providing free passes is something that we've done on other projects, but because of the funding for this particular project and our operating budget, I'm not sure that's something we can support at this time. Linda, I see you are in video.
I'm just going to add that our resident services staff does a lot of transportation coaching and help. So if people need dial ride and stuff like that, both our management team and our services staff can work with our residents. So, our folks are pretty savvy on how to get around, and a lot of them do use public transportation. So, the dial ride services are pretty well used by the people that we work with. And, folks with disabilities can also get Uber discounts and other kinds of ride pickup stuff. So our services staff really works with our residents, particularly ones who have disabilities, to make sure they get what they need.
One other thing I'll just add to that, and Jen, please jump in if you want to provide more detail, but as a city, we also offer paratransit services through our community services division. So that's also something that we can coordinate with the applicant if there's, a distinct need at this location.
Yeah, and just to follow up, those are both on demand and kind of regular service. So we're happy to coordinate with our community services division with the applicant and make sure that they're aware of those services.
Yeah, that's all. I knew that those programs and services existed, so there wasn't a use to tell the applicant, pay for a shuttle or something. So I think that's helpful. And I did just find that, the two bus routes I'm very familiar with, 99 and 801, very good bus routes right there on Mission, on the corner of sort of Tennyson, Mission, right leading into the project. So, I think there's good transit access, and I feel very confident about the answers I was just given. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I don't see any other questions from the commissioners. I just had a couple that I wanted to ask, and thank you for all the great presentations, because most of my questions were answered, along with some of the questions I had about transit that Commissioner Kenda just answered for me, and everyone else with your answers to his questions. But I also wanted to ask, it seems like this might be a good location for like a scooter e-bike operator. Are there ever, I don't see many in Hayward, but have there been any conversations, but collaborations for, it'd be a great place to scooter up and down to BART. Has there been any conversations like that?
Sorry, go ahead, Jen.
No, I was going to say, and Stephen might have the latest, but my understanding, it is in our strategic roadmap for the city to explore those types of relationships. But with COVID and everything else, it's not immediate, but we are, because there are a lot of impacts to the sidewalks and other kind of shared space that just need to be considered. And so we haven't implemented that yet, but it is something that we're exploring over the next couple of years and looking at those relationships.
Okay. Yeah. I appreciate if that was continuing to be looked at. Seems like a good location. That and several of the places along Mission Boulevard, actually. Let's see. I also wanted to ask, just, based on some of the comments from the public, but I wanted to ask about sort of like keeping up the grounds and all of that, and, just sort of maintenance and trash and all of that. So are there going to be on-site managers for the residents of La Vista, for surrounding neighbors to be able to call to sort of just address this if just because it's going to be a large amount of people on the Hill, like who's going to be in charge of receiving those calls and answering residents and neighbors' questions?
Short answer is yes. Kate, I'll let you give the long answer.
Perfect. Yes. Thank you, Commissioner Roche and Chair Roche. Eden prides itself on being a really good neighbor. We will have 2 on-site managers who will be available to the public, and we will make sure that their numbers are readily available. Linda, I'm not sure if you had anything to add on that front.
No, Kate, you pretty much got it. We're either maintenance or management will live on site. We're required by the programs that we use that it be the manager or the maintenance guy that are assigned to that site that live at that property. We have 2 units. You also know how to find us. because we're also in Hayward. And so Jen knows how to find me, as does Elizabeth. So if there is a problem, we try to move pretty quickly. But we do pride ourselves on being good neighbors. And then at Altamira, we're actually neighbors with what is actually a public park. And in many of the neighborhoods that we're in, we actually do a lot of work to make sure that not just our site is maintained, but we clean up bus sites and bus stops and other stuff. Our maintenance guys walk the property twice a day. And then our night manager, who is the person assigned to live there, walks before they go to bed. So we try to make sure we keep up the properties as best we can.
Great.
If I could just add, we also, in all of our agreements, when we dispose of land or we sell land from the city to private developers, we add additional provisions that they have to maintain a certain level of maintenance. So unlike a private development where we wouldn't have that added protection, in this case, because the city is selling the land, we have a added benefit of being able to require that in the development agreement as well.
All right, thank you. I know I was really happy to see the detail of that, like including the depth of the mulch and how it has to be maintained at 3 inches. And I loved that because, you see these people put in new developments with mulch and you get bald spots within months. So I thought that was pretty cool to see that level of detail. So thank you for that, Ms. Ott. And then also along the way, I was looking at that long, the long parking structure. I was wondering, is there going to be security for the residents' cars? Because it's going to be sort of this big open parking lot. And also just so like those spots are maintained for the residents.
Yeah, Kate can jump in and address this, but yes, we've been in conversations, and again, the details of this are a little bit fluid, but about wanting to somehow secure that parking lot, whether it's with fob entry or something, to make sure that one, people aren't cutting through the site to get to the school, and increasing traffic on 16th to really protect that 16th as only having residential traffic coming in and out. But there's different ways that can be achieved. So Kate, I don't know if you want to add more.
Yeah, I would say, thank you for the question. We are definitely open to discussions with the city about the best way to secure that parking lot. We know it's a long parking lot, and we wish we could have put it somewhere else, but due to site constraints, we're a little bit constrained. And then we were just talking with a nearby property owner earlier today about opportunities to increase and improve the lighting in that area along East 16th. So definitely interested in making sure everybody feels safe when they're walking to their car, and that folks' cars don't get broken into. So we will do everything in our power to ensure safety in that parking lot.
Okay, thank you. I think that was it for me for tonight. And let's see, does anyone else have any questions? Nope, I don't see any commissioner questions. So let's move to public comment for this item. Ms. Chan, if you would take over for the public comment section.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so if you wish to speak and you are using the Zoom application, please click the raise hand button. If you are dialing in, press *9 to raise your hand on the phone and use *6 to unmute yourself when called to speak. If you are streaming the meeting through Zoom on your computer but dialing in via phone, please mute yourself so that there is no feedback sound during the meeting. If there is disruptive feedback or excessive noise during the meeting, your audio will be disabled. Okay, all right, Chair, at this time, we have several hands, quite a few. All right, so let's start with Zach Bowling. Zach, if you could unmute yourself.
Hi there, Zach Bowling from East Bay YIMBY. I'm in strong support of this project. Thank you.
Is that it, Zach?
That's it.
All right. Okay, if you could mute yourself. Thank you, Zach. The next person I'm going to call on is Renee. Renee, can you please unmute yourself?
There's an unmute button. Can you all hear me okay? All right, perfect. Commissioners, my name is Renee Tianquico, and I am a former resident of Hayward, California. I was a resident in Hayward from 1992 until I left in 2005 for college. Although I no longer live in the city where I spent my formative years, I've come to appreciate my upbringing in Hayward. I attended Eldridge, Glassbrook, Schaefer Park, Strobridge elementary schools. I also attended King Middle School and Tennyson High School, so I am a Hayward boy at heart. Commissioner Bonilla was actually one of my classmates in Tennyson, so hello to him after many, many years. When my family and I immigrated to the United States in 1992, we lived in the Schaefer Park neighborhood until we moved to Gadding Road. We also lived in North Hayward off of Foothill Boulevard near the 238-580 exchange, but one thing was constant. My family was and always remained renters. As a bit of background of me now, I live in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., where I work as a policy analyst for a federal agency. I am the first in my family to own a home. I joke with my friends and family that the exorbitant cost of the Bay Area has prepared me well for the cost of real estate in DC, which trails behind only two metropolitan jurisdictions, the San Francisco Bay Area and New York City. I write today and speak today to support the proposed development of 176 affordable housing units. Every time I go back to Hayward, I am astonished at how expensive it is to live in Hayward. The 176 affordable housing units makes it clear that 176 families will have the opportunity to make Hayward their home. I think of my family members who still live in Hayward, including my mother and uncle, who are on fixed incomes and whose source of income cannot possibly keep pace with the rising housing costs. I also think of my friends from K-12 Hayward schools who are still renters, but are clinging to the little security they have left to remain in their homes and fear displacement. All it takes is one layoff, as we've recently experienced, a worldwide pandemic, to have the little security left be taken from you. It feels dejecting, and it is morally unconscionable to displace Haywardians who have spent their lives there because of inability to afford housing. The Planning Commission ought to keep this at the forefront when considering the 2040 general plan. I'll skip, I did submit some written comments for the record, so I'll skip to the more salient points. Although it is not a panacea for solving all of Hayward's problems, the dignity of having secure housing will relieve so many Hayward families. The Planning Commission has a rare opportunity to extend that security and to change the trajectory of so many Haywardians' lives by approving the proposed affordable housing plan. The Affordable Housing Plan also provides an environment for low-income Hayward families to thrive. After reviewing the plans, green space adjacent or nearby this planned development is space that could foster a healthy lifestyle. Research consistently shows that—
Excuse me, Renee, your time is up.
Can I wrap up real quick?
Please do.
Okay. Although I'm in an incredible place of privilege now and get to see the awesome power and authority of the federal government, local jurisdictions like the city of Hayward are the closest form of governance able to help their citizens. The 176 planned affordable housing units is a testament and an opportunity to ensure Haywardians have a shot at being good, productive members of society. Thank you.
Thank you. Please mute yourself. All right. The next person is Colin. Colin, please unmute yourself. Please unmute yourself.
Hello, my name is Colin Thormoto, and I'm speaking as a member of the Hayward Collective. Firstly, we want to thank the city staff for, as always, putting together such comprehensive staff reports and assuring that we have the information we need. Secondly, we want to voice our general support for the project, especially for one of the Caltrans parcels. Adding 176 units of housing will go a long way toward helping the city of Hayward meet its RHNA goals and provide some much-needed affordable housing to many families in the area who need rent-controlled housing. We also think it's important to have the school located nearby with all of the wraparound services it will be providing. With that being said, we also have some concerns we'd like to raise about the project, which we hope can be addressed during this commission meeting. Number one, the staff report lays out that there will be homes for moderate to very low income families, but it does not outline what proportionality of units will be dedicated to what income levels. And given the disparities and income ranges between moderate and very low income families, it would be helpful to know how many units will be dedicated to which income levels. Number two, the staff report says that there will be a shortcut staircase from the project site to Tennyson Road. If physically feasible, which we understand it may not be, it would be extraordinarily helpful for the residents to have a wheelchair accessible ramp installed as well in order to greatly shorten the linear distance between the development and public transit. Without having the access to the shortcut, they need to go significantly farther in order to reach any form of public transit by circling through the residential neighborhoods. We also had some questions which were submitted in an earlier letter about the primary school, but given that Ms. Garcia explained how much was in flux with the Hayward Unified School District, they have either been answered or shown to be currently unanswerable. We also want to once again encourage the city to develop an additional public lands policy to ensure that all public lands in Hayward are developed in a transparent way, which is beneficial to the Hayward community. Thank you all again, commissioners and chair, for your hard work, and I yield the remainder of my time.
Okay, the next speaker is Perlinda. Perlinda, please unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Perlinda Howe, and I am a proud parent of the founding families of the primary school in Hayward. As my world expanded with my first child, this school program has been a blessing for my 4-year-old daughter, Eden, myself, and my family. Since joining the program a little over a year ago, my husband and I have both been amazed by the school's holistic approach to education, active parent support, and convenient connection to the community and to community resources and activities. The school makes us feel valued and an active part of our child's education, and in recognizing that supporting a child's foundation in the home is an important aspect in the success of her learning. As a new parent, it has been a blessing to be connected with this I hope the school will continue for years to come, as I know it will make a great impact on the lives of our children. I grew up in Hayward Public Schools K through 12, graduating in 2006. I attended UC Berkeley locally and served several social services positions in the community. So I'm proud that my child has current and potential opportunities to grow up in the community that I did. In such dark times in the world, this school brings back the feel of community, and their program has been a light and given me hope for the future. Perhaps there will be an opportunity for me to share a little bit more about the program in the future, but I just wanted to briefly share my experience of the school this far and the hopes for my hopes for the future, that the school will continue to have a sustained location for years to come. I appreciate this opportunity to share with you all, and I hope you have a great evening.
Mama? Thank you, Pearl. Please mute yourself. Thank you. The next speaker is Fern. Please unmute yourself, Fern.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes, we do, Fern.
Hi, I wanted to speak in favor of this project. I think it's an incredibly important project, and projects like this are necessary in satisfying our growing demand for housing, as the alternative is to build in greenfield spaces and take up more wildland, which both encourages urban sprawl and ruins ecosystems. So, densification is important in that regard, and that's why I would like to speak in favor of projects like this one. With regards to transit, I was wondering, I'm not sure how any of this works, but I was wondering if AC Transit could be contacted about an extension of, say, line 86 or the currently suspended line 83 up Tennyson Road to the other development that's up there. And that would, of course, also serve this one on its way. That would be, I think, ideal in terms of connecting this high density node of activity to South Hayward BART station. But regardless, I think that the proximity to BART, it really, I think everything makes sense here. These homes will have amazing access to the rest of the region. South Hayward BART is served by 2 different BART lines to basically all of our major centers in the coastal East Bay, San Francisco, and eventually San Jose. So yeah, I just wanted to say this is a great project, and I think not to move forward with it would be foolish. Thank you.
Thank you, Fern. Please mute yourself. Okay. The next speaker is Sitlali. I'm sorry. Yeah, I have Sitlali Ramos. Oh, she must, yes. Sitlali, can you please unmute yourself?
Good night, everybody. My name is actually Maria Elena Ramos. The Zoom that I have here is under my daughter's name, so sorry about that. I'm here on behalf of primary school. It's been more than a year that I have been working with the primary school. I have 4 kids in total. One that just graduated from Mount Eden. They have always been in the hub school in Hayward. It has been a good experience, but since my daughter, the 4-year-old, has been in primary school, I have seen a difference in myself and her. The group meetings that we have once a month, all the support as a parent and for the child that I have seen, I had never had that connection with my 2 older daughters that I have. And it's been a blessing, and I really, really hope that this school continue, because my daughter loves it, the connection that she has with the teacher, even if it has been from Zoom. She's just waiting, like, when I'm gonna meet again through Zoom with my teacher. And then once a month, it was after the pandemic, it started going, less cases. They start meeting up with once a month with the children. In the classroom, it was just the teacher and my daughter, and singing and reading books and going through the materials that we have going through at home with them, working. It's been awesome. And as a parent, I feel like they're like my second family. And I want to thank you, commissioners, for considering the primary schools to continue for all these kids. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Magdalena. If you could please mute yourself. Okay, thank you. The next speaker is Blake Felson. Blake, can please unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Blake Felson. I'm with Felson Companies. Our company owns and manages Mission Heights Apartments and Crestview Terrace Apartments as the 2 apartment buildings that were referenced earlier. They're right next to the proposed development. We are in support of the project. We know Eden Housing would do a great job with this one. They have a great track record. We've worked with them many times in the past on things. One thing, we do have a couple concerns that were raised in this meeting. Commissioner Stevens mentioned the shadowing. He said 113 feet could be shadowed over Mission Heights, which is a concern of ours. So we asked the applicant to provide a shading plan for us so we could see how that would really impact us on that part of that building. Another concern we have is on East 16th Street. There is, I believe Commissioner Roach mentioned the impact with security, and that is a security concern of ours. East 16th is not lit very well. We try to light it up on our side of the street, but we only have half the street. So the asphalt is severely broken out, and it really needs to be repaved. So I hope if this project goes through, the city or whomever is in charge of this one could repave that street. It's very, very bad condition. Also, another concern of ours is landscaping. We want to work a little bit more to kind of nuance the landscaping where that big long drive aisle is for all the parking. We want to make sure that our residents have something nice to look at. So we want to work with them a little bit more on that. But in whole, though, we are in support of the project. We hope it moves forward. I'm excited about the school. It seems like a great mixed-use project that could be really interesting. I haven't really heard of that before. So we hope it happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Blake. If you could mute yourself. Thank you. The next speaker is Hayward. If you could please unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so I'm speaking on behalf of myself. I'm a Hayward resident. Went to Helen Turner Kindergarten all the way up to Cal State Hayward, and I still call it Cal State Hayward because I don't like calling it Cal State East Bay. Yeah, I fully support this project. I'm really excited that Hayward is looking at all this new development, especially around the 2 BART stations that they currently have. I remember back in the day when around the downtown Hayward BART station, there's nothing there. And then all of a sudden, all this like new housing got built up, and I was wondering like, oh, when are they going to start building up the area around South Hayward BART station? Because it's way easier to get to BART station if you're just like right there. And the more people that use BART, I feel like the better it is for the air quality, better it is for traffic. So I'm super excited. This looks great. Plus, like, it has a school on there. So yeah, just thanks everyone, and hope this goes through.
Thank you. Please mute yourself. Thank you. The next speaker is Lacey Amadei. Lacey, please unmute yourself. I don't know if Lacey had a connection issue, but seems to have lowered her hand.
Yeah.
Lacey, there she is, hang on. Lacey, please unmute yourself.
Oh, hello, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Lacey, go ahead.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Lacey Amadei. I'm calling with the Hayward Collective. Colin Thormoto already delivered all the points from the Hayward Collective, but I just wanted to call in just to express my support overall for this project. It really is a great community benefit, and it's great to see one of the 238 parcels that's publicly owned going for 100% affordable use. I would just encourage when it's appropriate to consider resident prioritization, especially for an impacted group, or maybe considering giving priority to educators, and maybe that could include CSU East Bay educators. But that might be a nice addition. But yeah, just calling to support this project and thank everyone who's a part of making it happen. And that's all. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Lacey. Please mute yourself. Okay. Chair, that is everyone that had their hand up today, this evening.
Yep. Thank you. And thank you everybody for calling in with those comments. And before I close public comments, I wanted to ask staff if you wanted to address any of the questions that we received, like about the parking lot and the paving along that street. And I think there's some other questions about landscaping.
Oh, excuse me, Chair. Yep. We can close the public comments and then staff can reply.
Great, thank you. Let's officially close the public comment period, and yes, to ask staff if there was anything you wanted to address there.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair Roche. Yes, first of all, again, thanks for all the people who took time to speak at the meeting. Since the DDA is not going to council until the fall, there's still some moving targets with this, and there's still some work that's happening. Yes, in response to the concerns about 16th Street, as the applicant expressed earlier, they are already in conversations with the neighboring property. There's also conditions of approval related to improvements on 16th Street, which the applicant will be responsible for. Some of the renderings didn't include all of the landscaping that actually is proposed as part of the site. So if you look at the project plans, there is landscaping and street tree or parking lot trees and things like that will help soften some of these edges of the project. And the landscape plans that are looked at in the entitlement application are preliminary. So kind of the full detailed set of landscape plans will come later during the building permit process. And our city's landscape architect, Michelle Koo, is fabulous at really getting good designs and sustainable designs out of developers. So she'll continue to work with the applicant on that. I think the only other thing I heard was interest with coordinating with AC Transit on maybe extending bus routes. Obviously that's somewhat out of the city's purview, but yes, obviously we are always open to having conversations and seeing if we can improve that connectivity, not just for the residents of this project, but for this eastern portion of Tennyson corridor.
Okay, great. Thank you. I hope that helps answer some of those questions. Okay, let's move into the commissioner comment portion of the meeting. And if my commissioners will allow me, I am going to use my point of privilege as the chair to speak first this evening and potentially speak a little bit later afterwards. But I wanted to go first because I am very excited about this project. And I want to, wait, let me get my notes back up. I lost my notes. I think this is an incredible collaboration between the city and Eden Housing and the Pacific Company and the primary school. I think that it offers just a wonderful option for our Hayward residents at large. I mean, to be able to live in a beautiful location with a beautiful park next door where your kids can play safely, where a school might be an option and you don't have to commute to school, you don't have to commute to for healthcare services. I just think it's an incredibly unique opportunity for us, for Hayward to be able to offer that. And while we have been busy, approving a lot of housing in Hayward, I think this is a good way to sort of try to balance a little bit of the displacement that we've seen with higher rents because of some new above market rate housing that's coming in, as well as gentrification and finding some options for people to be able to stay in Hayward. So I'm very supportive of the project. I hope we move forward with this. And while I understand there are a few questions about parking and things like that, I mean, parking is our constant question on this commission. And I think that we have to continue to try to solve that as a city. I mean, I want to continue to look at offsite parking. I think offsite EV parking would be wonderful. I read one study out of UCLA that basically said, moving forward, that it really needs to be a collaboration between city governments and developers to provide general offsite parking with EV charging stations. And maybe that can be a collaboration with like a Tesla or another EV charging company. So I think that's a sort of like general problem that we need to look at for the mission corridor. I loved that we brought up shuttles tonight. I have been talking about a mission corridor shuttle for a long time. I think it would be so helpful if there was a general shutting, if there was ever funding for that. I want to keep looking at that. But beyond the few concerns, I think on balance, which I always say, this is such a benefit to Hayward and to the residents of Hayward, and I will be supporting the project. And that is all I want to say. And let me move on to my next, let's see, Commissioner Okenda.
Thank you. I am strongly in favor of this project, have been for a while. I love the concept. I'm really grateful for the partnership. And the more that I learn about the primary school, I actually got emotional when I was watching the video the Vimeo video that you all submitted to us. I thought a lot about the kinds of supports that my parents, when I was growing up, we grew up in poverty. Neither of my parents graduated high school. There was, a great need in our family for additional supports, not only for us kids, but also for my two parents. And so the structure and the model that you guys are building is inspiring to me. And I'm truly grateful for the work that you've been putting into this and the city staff for supporting in this effort. And, I guess I wanted to share that kind of personal touch for me that I do believe. I can't do a counterfactual with my upbringing, but I believe that had my parents had more support, a lot of things would have been different. So I really appreciate what y'all are doing here. I did want to address two quick things. Actually, really just one. I wanted to respond. The Hayward Collective, I think it was Colin from the Collective in public comment had mentioned a question about the breakdown of the affordability of the units. It was not in the staff report. That's right. It's in attachment 5 to the overall agenda packet, and that breaks down in the density bonus plan the various affordability levels. And so I did a back of the napkin percentages because I didn't put those in the report, just so you have an idea, public. So for the very low income units, there will be 2 total. Not a lot, unfortunately, in my opinion, but I understand the constraints. That amounts to about 1%. That's really like the not so great news in my view. But 77% of the units are low income. So that's 136 units, including the studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms, pretty evenly distributed, are all low income, which I believe the designation is under, correct me if I'm wrong, it might be, depending on what law we're talking about, it's under 60% area median income, but I don't have that right in front of me. So sorry if I'm off there. It might be 80%. Yeah.
Commissioner Okenda, sorry to interrupt, but I just want to, because it's a little complicated, and Christina Morales, our Housing Division Manager, is also on. Would you like her to summarize? Because of all of the density bonus, inclusionary housing ordinance, and just a lot of different competing.
I was looking at the matrix. Yeah.
But she's here online. So do you mind if she goes ahead and summarizes that? Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, so there is, on this project, there's an overlay of different affordability requirements, and what the affordable housing plan demonstrates, or what the restrictions are imposed by the city that include the density bonus and the affordable housing ordinance requirement. The project in a whole will actually be providing affordable housing, I believe, from very low to low income, and it'll be a mixture of units. And I don't know if we want to have the developer explain what the actual unit mix will be under the tax credits, but because of the overlay of the different funding source requirements, we find that the way the city defines low income and calculates the rent for low income, and the conflict with that in terms of tax credits, puts our restrictions, those rents that they're going to charge, in a moderate income category, but the unit is still restricted at low income, and there will be deeper affordability in terms of the units because it is a tax credit project.
Thank you.
Did you have anything to add?
Thank you so much. That was a really great way of summing it up. And thank you for your question, or bringing this to the table. We will restrict these units at lower affordability levels than you're seeing in the affordable housing plan. But there's this lack of synchronization between the California state income limits and rent limits and the tax credit allocation committee limits. So that's why you're seeing what you're seeing in that matrix. But they will be restricted between 30% and 80% AMI per the TCAC levels.
Excellent. And I just wanted to, my purpose of bringing these up, because I wanted to designate the categories of the various income brackets that are being reached, because that was the public comment question, not necessarily the depth of affordability in the abstract. So, I mean, I did these numbers maybe because what you're saying, and my understanding was also this, that there are these differences reading the matrix. That was, but I guess if, depending on what definition you're using, I will just add that it sounds like, from what I look at, about 3/4 are what I would designate as low income units in the terms that I typically refer to, and that's generally like less than 80% AMI. And it sounds like they're saying that many of these units will actually be lower than that. So correct me if I was wrong about that, but that's what I'm hearing from you, and I just want to make sure that that's clear to the public, even though it is a complicated little issue here. So. All right, that's all. And I think I'd really like to move this item, but I'll defer to my colleagues on that and let some comments go.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Kenda. Commissioner Mendel.
Thank you, Chair. So, Ms. Blanton, my Zoom skipped while you were speaking. Did you respond to the question from Mr. Felson about the lighting along 16th Street? Will there be additional lighting as part of this that provides additional, light and safety on 16th?
I would have to confirm the conditions of approval from the Public Works Department, but I know that there are street improvements included. And as I said, we can go back and check that as staff. If that's not included, that's something that can be worked into the development agreement. So I will double check right now when you're talking, and I'll try to get back to you with an answer.
Perfect. Thank you. Quick disclosure, I have met with Ms. Garcia and the folks at the primary school a couple times over the last 2 years. And I met with the team from Eden Housing a couple of weeks ago, just to discuss the project proposal. So and maybe this question I have is for Ms. I suspect. So this is not a normal development in that the city owns this land and there's a DDA, a development agreement with the city. And that's not before the planning commission tonight, right? We're just approving the project plan, yes?
That's correct.
Right, but there is a separate agreement contract between the city and Eden Housing or the other parties as part of this project. And it's my recollection that there was some discussion. Well, let me ask it a different way. I think that would be the appropriate place for the city to add requirements about Hayward residents being given preference for residents in this development. Would you agree? And is it already part of that conversation? What can you tell us?
Yeah, and yes, it is. And we are negotiating kind of the transactional agreements that go along with the affordable housing plan, and those get recorded on the land prior to closing. So those are, so they run with the land. And as I think Linda Mandolini said, it sounds like they're open to considering a Hayward preference on all of the units. And so we will be having those conversations with them as part of the DDA agreement.
Is there value or a need for the Planning Commission to speak on that point at all tonight, or should we leave that to the DDA and the council to resolve?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've heard you loud and clear. It was already something that Ms. Morales was working on that's part of the negotiation. But, I think I don't think it needs to be part of the official entitlement, but if you want to make it clear kind of by motion that that's something you'd like to pass along to the council as additional advice or to staff and council, we're happy to take that under advisement and work that into our negotiation with the developers.
Okay, thank you. It sounds like it doesn't need to be in the agreement, but I do want it written into the record that I do fully support preference for Hayward residents, and that the city council should really, and staff should definitely follow up on that point. And I appreciate Ms. Mandolini from Eden Housing being open to that. And then the point about, there was a question about extending AC transit. I forgot the number, was it 86? Up Tennyson. And I think that the point in time to make that request of AC transit is when the park is built and this development is built, and there's a critical mass of additional people who are either living up there or going to the park as a destination. And that would be the logical time to go to AC transit and say, look, there's a lot more up the hill now. Please extend your line that extra quarter mile. And definitely that's something the city should follow up on probably 3 or 4 years from now when it's all done, because these things always take a little while. So that was a good suggestion for later follow-up. I'm fully in support of this. I think it's fantastic. I really appreciate Eden Housing because you do quality work, you have good developments, and you maintain them long term. I was speaking with, years ago, a group of neighbors who were expressing concerns about another 100% affordable Eden Housing project. And they're saying, oh, well, yeah, we were a little nervous about that. We really want developments like this one in the very southern end of Hayward on Mission Boulevard. It's beautiful landscaping. The neighbors are nice. It's well maintained, well managed. And it was my great pleasure to say to them, oh, yeah, that's an Eden Housing 100% affordable project that you're referring to and you're holding up as the model. And so you give, your projects are well maintained long term. Thank you for that. Happy to support yet another good Eden Housing project in Hayward, and I look forward to voting for the motion when it is needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Chair Roche, if you don't mind, I just wanted to follow up on Commissioner Mendel's point. Yes, there is a condition of approval from our Public Works Department that a detailed photometric plan, which will include on-site and off-site lighting, will be reviewed during the improvement plan phase.
Great, and obviously let's keep Mr. Felson in the loop on that conversation so that he can weigh in and see the plans when they're developed.
Will do.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Stevens.
Thank you, Chair. So I agree with the concept, but I don't agree with the execution. First off, what I've reviewed, the plans that I see here, and sort of the discussion we've had about Plans are changing. We have renderings that are inaccurate. In many communities, we wouldn't even be here with this kind of level of detail. So I don't really understand how cyclists access this facility. I don't agree that this is walkable at all. I guess I'm sort of just don't really understand how the general plan identifies this use in this location. I mean, I understand objective standards. I think there needs to be a better look at how these are being defined. I guess one thing that sort of really bothers me about this is when we talk about folks that might need to gain access to the bus, those with physical challenges might have a really difficult time gaining access to buses on Mission Boulevard. And I know that paratransit is available, but paratransit is a taxpayer-funded service. So why are we developing a project in a location that's going to need to expand paratransit? I guess this is not the proper topography for this type of land use. Now, this final part's going to be super hypocritical because I live in the hills, but I sort of think that the hills of Hayward never should have been developed. And I would like to point out, when you look up in the hills of Fremont, it's beautiful. You look on the peninsula up into the hills, it's completely overbuilt. You know, trying to build a 66-foot tall structure in this location, I think is really a visual challenge. And I think it really degrades from the beauty of Hayward. So I do not support this project as designed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Ali Sullivan.
Thank you. A couple thoughts here. First, want to thank everyone for the presentations this evening. Details, much appreciated. In theory, I think this is a very good project. Obviously, maybe not obviously, but I am supportive of public housing. I'm supportive of the ability to include community services in the facility. I'm supportive of the school project. And I'm very supportive of development around public transit. In practice, though, I don't love this project for a couple of reasons. First off, I fundamentally don't think you should be building on top of or extremely adjacent to a fault line for buildings, particularly 5 or 6 story building with high density. I do find it, again, almost unfathomable that you would want to put a school with close to 400 students on top of a fault line. I agree with Commissioner Stevens, and as I alluded to earlier, believe that it's a fallacy to assume that this is a transit-friendly development. Again, personal opinion, this is opinion time. I find it highly unlikely that anyone is going to be walking up and down the hill to go to BART. The vast majority of your folks that are going to be living here are likely going to be driving cars, which brings us to the parking question. And then finally, I really don't believe that this fits into the community. And I say that in the sense that it's a 6-story monolith being built on top of the hill. And I don't think that it integrates well visually. With all that said, it's my understanding based on, and again, this is why I asked the question of city staff, SB 330, that the project must be approved if it objectively meets the standards of the general plan and the zoning ordinance. And so while I don't agree with a lot of what's presented here in the plan, I believe it objectively meets the standards of the general plan and the zoning ordinance. And so I don't believe that I can vote against this project. And so leads me to believe that I'm going to grudgingly support this. And with that said, I really question why the applicant and why city staff progressed so far along with the project of this type in the hills. I can't stress enough how problematic I find it to be building such a high density project on top of the Hayward Fault. It's really shocking to me that this type of a development would have progressed with the full understanding that yes, there are ways to mitigate development, but a 6-story building with a school, it's like putting a school at the end of an airport runway. you don't do it. Those are my comments. Those are my thoughts. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, Commissioner Goldstein, did you want to speak? I didn't see your hand up. I just want to give you an opportunity during this discussion period.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I should have put my hand up. Thank you for calling on me. I'm in favor of this proposal for a lot of different reasons. Originally, I was thinking that putting affordable housing residents all in one place could be detrimental to the neighborhood, because in the past, neighborhoods like that have been stigmatized. But I can see something different developing here, no pun intended. The school, with all of its wraparound services, I think really does promise to make the community stronger and healthier, and potentially stronger and healthier than communities that don't have those same services. So the fact that there's a place to live, it's close by to transportation, which all studies indicate is one of the biggest contributors to financial mobility. The fact that there's the school there, and they don't need to have a car to get the transportation, the school to the park, and take advantage of all these different services, I think really speaks volumes. So I'm in favor of the proposal, and I'm really looking forward to seeing another outstanding project from Eden Housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Goldstein. Let's see, with no further questions from my commissioners, at this time, I would like to invite a motion if we have one.
I'd like to move.
Commissioner Okenda is moving the vote, and I would like to second the motion this evening. So Ms. Chan, we have a motion on the table to approve the staff recommendation, motion moved by Commissioner Okenda and seconded by Chair Roach.
Thank you, Chair. So are we ready to vote?
Yes, I don't see any other hands up, so I believe we're ready to vote.
All right. Commissioner Ali Sullivan.
Based on the requirements of SB 330, I'll vote aye.
Commissioner Goldstein.
Yes.
Commissioner Mendel.
Yes.
Commissioner Okenda.
Strong yes.
Commissioner Stevens.
No.
Chair Roche.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. That's 5 ayes and 1 no.
Thank you. And with that, the motion passes with 5 ayes and 1 no. And I want to thank everyone that hung in there with us this evening. Thank you to the staff for all the work and the questions you answered, and Eden Housing, Pacific Companies in the primary school. And let's see. And thank you, everyone. Let's move on. Oh, before we move on.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Before we move on, I wanted to invite Commissioner Bonilla back now that that item is completed. Before we move on. Hopefully, let's see. Is Commissioner?
Let them know that we're done, Chair.
Oh, thanks.
So,
yeah. We'll just wait a minute. All right, and I see we have Commissioner Bonilla back. Welcome back, Commissioner Bonilla.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on. As I told everybody, item 2 was continued, so we're going to be skipping item 2 this evening. And let's move on to approval of the minutes for the July 8th, 2021 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Goldstein. Second? Commissioner?
Yeah.
Great. I saw. Thanks. Sorry for the talking over you. Ms. Chan, we have a motion to approve the meeting minutes for July 8, 2021, moved by Commissioner Goldstein and seconded by Commissioner Okenda.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Ali Sullivan.
Aye.
Commissioner Bonilla.
Aye.
Yes.
Commissioner Mendel.
Yes.
Commissioner Okenda,
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens,
Yes.
Chair Roche.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, the motion to approve the minutes passes. All right, let's move on to oral reports on planning and zoning matters. Hey, Jeremy.
Good evening, commissioners, and thank you, Chair Roche. Just a couple of quick items of interest. So this is the last meeting before everyone's break, August recess. A couple of quick friendly reminders, though. We do have a special Planning Commission meeting, which was rescheduled from September 9th to September 2nd in order to accommodate Admissions Day holiday for city staff and for the state. And so the next Planning Commission meeting is scheduled for Thursday, September 2nd. And then I also wanted to remind the commission that we do have a joint City Council Planning Commission meeting scheduled on Tuesday, September 28th, tentatively scheduled right now between 5 and 7 p.m. in the evening. So you can go ahead and mark your calendars. And again, this is a work session on the upcoming housing element, an equity plan update, as well as a discussion about the upzoning and the design guidelines that we previously discussed with the commission. So I just wanted to put that on your calendar to reserve that, and you'll be getting some more information in the coming weeks.
What was the date again?
September 28th, which is a Tuesday.
Okay, thanks. Is that it, Jeremy?
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner announcements and referrals. Let's see, let's go back here. Any commissioner announcements? No. I guess everybody was expecting a really long meeting, and although, no, it's only 9 o'clock. Not so bad. It's not so bad. So I think that's it with no commissioner announcements or referrals. Nope, I don't see anything. Then let's go ahead and adjourn the meeting. It's 9:03 p.m. and thank everybody for hanging in there with us tonight and for all the great discussion.
Commissioner Stevens was raising his hand.
Oh, sorry. Commissioner Stevens, were you saying goodbye or did you have a comment?
Oh, I just wanted to ask a question. In the last couple of weekends, there's been some really great events that have occurred in Hayward. And I must have missed the memo on that. So I was wondering if anybody knows of any kind of great things that are happening in the next couple of weeks, just so we could publicize those. That'd be awesome, because I missed the last two.
Yeah, there's a downtown Hayward event that's happening on August 19th. Al, you probably know a little bit more about that than I do. You want to speak on that?
So that's probably the downtown street party. Thursday the 19th. Yeah, I don't have my calendar in front of me, but yeah, that's going to be a good one. It'll be sort of a yet another grand reopening or welcome back to downtown opportunity. Those usually start around 4 and run till 8 or 9, but basically anytime in the evening, just come on down and there's bands and music and all the restaurants are open. Great time.
Thanks for that information.
Yeah, I find a lot of it on Twitter. The Hayward Stack, I think, announces a lot of these, and so I see a lot of these pop up, and some of the Facebook posts too, I think, from the city. And then Nextdoor is pretty good too about announcing all this stuff. So, but you're right. Sometimes they slip by, and you're like, wait a minute, I would have liked to go into the Heritage Plaza opening. That would have been a good one, and I missed that one too. So, thanks, Commissioner Stevens. Okay, anyone else? Okay, back to adjourning the meeting. And now it is 9:04 p.m. and everybody have a good evening.
Good night, everyone. Great decision today.
Thank you.
Good job.